Okay, so once again, good day everyone. So this time our topic is about a research basic, no? Basic research is methodical study with no particular applications to processes or products in mind, no? But rather increase knowledge or understanding of the underlying features of phenomena and of observable facts. So it encompasses all scientific research and experiments aimed at deepening our understanding of the fundamental concepts in the disciplines of physical, engineering, environmental, and life sciences, no, that are connected to long-term requirements for national security. So the framework for technological advancement is provided by visionary, high-reward research. And we need to accept the fact that research occasionally aims to broaden, no, a field of study or deepen our comprehension of a natural occurrence. And this kind of study is referred to as basic, pure, or fundamental research. And it is a significant way to produce novel concepts, no, ideas, and hypotheses. Since basic research is frequently motivated by the need of understand the unknowable, no, it frequently fuels scientific advances and development. And we shall define basic research and discuss its data collection techniques and discuss how it varies from other research paradigms in this discussion. Okay, to give us more details about the topic, let us all welcome our first presenter. Go ahead, madam.
Thank you, sir. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Liza May Bagasala, and my topic is about research basics. So when we say research, the usual thing that comes up with our mind is to explore, discover, search for a certain answer. Just like yung sinabi ni Dr. Heather Corwin sa isa sa mga journal niya sa research basics. When entering into research arena, usually the language and meaning could be dizzying. And she also quoted na dun sa sa sinabi ni Albert Einstein na if we knew what it was we were doing, then it would not be called a research. So, next po. Our objective for this topic is, next po. Yeah. By the end of my discussion, we should be able to first explain what is meant by the term research and describe the stages of the research process, describe what research basics is, describe some of the more qualitative and quantitative approaches, and describe how data, information, knowledge, decision-making, and the research-client relationship relate to research, formulate research problems from research data, and formulate and write research questions or hypotheses and research objective. Next. Now, let's go to the question, what do we mean by research? Tulad nga ng sinabi ni Doc kanina, research is searching for and gathering information usually to answer a particular question or problem. And it is considered to be more objective, methodical, well-determined scientific process of investigation. Research usually involves a more systematic structure of investigation. And finally, at the end, it results into a systematic report form. Then another, research is a very general term for an activity that involves finding out in a more or less systematic way the things that you did not know. A more academic interpretation is that research involves finding out about things that no one else knew either. And we can also define research as an activity of systematic inquiry that seeks answers to a problem. Next po. Now, ano naman yung tinatawag natin na basic research? Basic research is also known as pure research and fundamental research. The term basic research refers to the study that is meant to increase our scientific knowledge base. This type of research is often purely theoretical with the intent of increasing our understanding of certain phenomena or behavior. So hindi lang siguro natin napapansin, no? Pero we all encounter research in our daily lives and we are used to making our own judgments about research findings. For example, the results of research on many topics that are presented to us in the form of either newspaper, articles, books, reports, television programs. So usually yung mga crime level figures na pinapresent sa atin sa television, sa news reports, Saka yung some topics katulad ng diet and health, yung mga popular sa magazines, saka sa mga television programs. So, if we assess the information with which we are presented, we form an opinion as to the validity and relevance of the research and come to our own conclusions based on the considerations na pwedeng kung anong naiintindihan natin sa questions, paano present yung findings, bakit kinonduct your research, and what we know about who conducted the research, and what the other people think about the information, and how the research findings relate to us. Next. Yeah. So, what can we use research to do in order to gain this new knowledge? So, here are some 8 ways that it can be used. 1, 2. Meron akong nakalagay dito, pwedeng categorize, describe, explain, evaluate, compare, correlate, predict, and control. Next po. So when we say categorize, this involves forming of typology of objects, events, or concepts. Examples, setting of names or boxes into which this can be sorted. And this can be helpful in explaining which things belong together and how. Next is yung describe. Ito naman yung descriptive research. Nagre-rely siya sa observation as a means of collecting data. It attempts to examine situations in order to establish what is in the norm. So what can be predicted to happen again under the same circumstances. Next is explain. This is a descriptive type of research specifically designed to deal with the complex issues, to move beyond just getting the facts in order to make sense in the myriad other elements involved such as human, political, social, cultural, and contextual. Next. Next is evaluate. This involves making judgments about the quality of objects or events. So quality can be measured either in an absolute sense or a non-comparative basis. So to be useful, the methods of evaluation must be relevant to the context and intentions of the research. Another way is to compare. So ito naman, 2 or more contrasting cases can be examined to highlight differences and similarities between them, leading to a better understanding of phenomena. Next is to correlate. Relationships between 2 phenomena are investigated to see whether and how they influence each other. So the relationship might be just a loose link or at a one extreme or direct link when one phenomena causes the another. So these are measured as a level of association. Next is predict. Next po. Predict. This can sometimes be done in research areas where correlations are already known. So predictions are possible, future behavior or events are made on the basis that if there has been a strong relationship between 2 or more characteristics or events in the past, then this should exist in similar circumstances in the future, leading to predictable outcomes. While yung control, once you understand an event or situation, you may be able to find ways to control it. So for this, we need to know what the cause and effect relationships are and that we are capable of exerting control over the vital ingredients. So all of the technology na meron tayo ngayon relies on this ability to control. So sa mga nasabi ko, we can combine 2 or more of these objectives in a research project with sometimes one objective needing to be successfully achieved muna before starting the next. So for example, we usually need to be able to explain how something happens before we can work out how to control it. Next. Next po, meron tayong numerous types of research designs that are appropriate for different types of research projects. So, the choice of which design to apply depends on the nature of the problems posed by the research aims. So each type of research design has a range of research methods that are commonly used to collect and analyze the type of data that is generated by the investigation. So I have here some of the more common research designs with a short explanation of the characteristics of each. So ito yung 11, magkakaroon lang tayo ng brief description. First, next po. Yan. First, ito yung tinatawag natin na historical research design. This aims at a systematic and objective evaluation and synthesis of evidence in order to establish facts and draw conclusions about pasts. So, since this is historical, it uses primarily the historical data, katulad ng archaeological remains as well as documentary sources of the past. So, usually it is necessary to carry out tests in order to check the authenticity of the sources. So apart from informing us about what happened in previous times and reevaluating beliefs about the past, historical research can be used to find contemporary solutions based on the past to inform present and future trends. Next is yung descriptive, pabak po. Ayan. Descriptive research design. This design relies on observation as a means of collecting data. So it attempts to examine situations in order to establish what is the norm. Tulad nga sinabi ko kanina. So observation can take many forms. Depende sa type ng information na hinahanap and the people na ini-interview. So the scale of the research is influenced by two major factors, the level of complexity of the survey and the scope or extent of the survey. While correlation, ito naman yung design na ginagamit sa pag-examine ng relationship between two concepts. So there are two broad classifications of relational statements. An association between two concepts when there is some kind of influence of one on the another, and the causal relationship for one causes changes to occur in the other. Wait lang po. Sorry po. Okay, next po. Comparative research design. So this design is used to compare past and present or different parallel situations, particularly when the researcher has no control over events. So it can look at situations at different scales, pwedeng macro, ito yung international saka national level. Micro, ito yung community level saka individual level. And the analogy is used to identify similarities in order to predict results, assuming that if two events are similar in certain characteristics, they could well be similar in others too. So in this way, comparative design is used to explore and test what conditions were necessary to cause certain events so that it is possible, for example, to understand the likely effects of making certain decisions. Well, simulation. Experimental. Experimental research attempts to isolate and control every relevant condition which determines the events investigated and then observes the effects when the conditions are manipulated. So at its simplest, changes are made to an independent variable and the effects are observed on a dependent variable. For example, yung cause and effect. While yung simulation, it involves devising a representation in a small simplified form of a system which can be manipulated to gauge effects. It is similar to experimental design in the respect of this manipulation, but it provides a more artificial environment in that it does work with original materials at the same scale. For example, katulad nung pag nasa work environment tayo sa sa trabaho natin, usually sa mga private companies, meron tayong ginagawang simulation sa isang system na gusto nating i-try bago natin gawin sa actual work environment. So, halimbawa, nasa training ka pa lang, tapos may pinapasimulate sa'yo na system, gagawin mo siya sa work environment, pero hindi mo siya gagawin dun sa actual na database, dun sa operations. Next, evaluation. This descriptive type of research is specifically designed to deal with complex social issues. So it aims to move beyond just getting the facts by trying to make sense of the myriad human, political, and social, cultural, and contextual elements involved. So there are a range of different approaches of evaluation models. For example, systems analysis, or kaya responsive evaluation, depende sa kung anong klase ng research yung ikakonduct. Next is action. Essentially, this is an on-the-spot procedure, principally designed to deal with a specific problem found in a particular situation. So there is no attempt made to separate the problem from its context in order to study it in isolation. So the conclusions from the findings are applied immediately and further monitored to gauge their effectiveness. So yung action research design depends mainly on observation and behavioral data because it is so bound up in a particular situation. It is difficult to generalize the results. Next is ethnological research design. This research focuses on people. So in this approach, the researcher is interested in how the subjects of the research interpret their own behavior rather than imposing a theory from outside. So it takes place in the undisturbed natural setting of the subject's environment. So it regards the context to be as equally important as the actions it studies and attempts to represent the totality of the social, cultural, and economic situation. Okay, last, yung cultural research design natin. Dito naman, many of the prevailing theoretical debates are concerned with the subjects of language and cultural interpretation dahil masyadong malawak din na sakop nito. So, cultural research provides methodologies that allow a consistent analysis of cultural texts so that they can be compared, pwedeng replicated, disproved, or generalized. So, for example, yung mga approaches sa interpretation of cultural text, pwedeng context analysis or content analysis. Meron tinatawag na semiotics and discourse analysis. So, the meaning of the term cultural text has been broadened from that of the purely literary works to that of the many forms of communication, both formal such as opera, yung mga news programs sa TV, cocktail parties. And sa informal part, pwedeng in how people dress or how people converse. So, next po. Ayun. So the key points here is when deciding on our type of research, it is our research interest that decides the nature of our research problem, and this will indicate the appropriate type of research to follow. So once the objective of the research of the project have been established, the issue of how these objectives can be met leads to a consideration of which research design should be chosen. So when we collect data, we are collecting raw or analyzed facts or figures. So information is data that has been analyzed that is often presented in a form or specifically for a decision-making task. And knowledge is assimilated information and understanding of that information. So sa research objectives, describe what we aim to achieve by a project and may be linked to a hypothesis and used for exploratory study without hypothesis. So that ends my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Okay, so to give you an additional input, no, of course, again, as what our presenter mentioned, no, basic research is frequently motivated by need to understand the unknowable, no, and when we say basic research, no, this will be an approach, no, to research known as basic research seeks, no, to comprehend a topic, a phenomena, or fundamental law of nature better. No, this kind of research is more concerned with the expansion of knowledge than with resolving a particular issue. So sometimes, no, they also say instead of basic research, that is pure research, no, because pure research and fundamental research, no, are other names for basic research, no. Then basic research is frequently explanatory in character, although it can also typically be exploratory, descriptive, or explanatory, no. So the main goal of this research strategy is information gathering to enhance understanding, no, which may subsequently be applied to provide answers to problem, no. So with the primary goals of advancing the frontier of knowledge and broadening the breadth of this field of study, basic research can be conducted in a variety of fields. Now, let's say, for example, it can be found in the fields of technology, psychology, education, and medicine, to name a few. No, in education, no, pedagogical theories that explain teaching and learning behaviors in the classroom are developed using basic research. No, of course, it is also a science basic research, no, wherein it is focused on the investigation or to ascertain the chemical makeup of organic compounds, a study of identity, the elements of human DNA, and so on and so forth. No, so as what our presenter mentioned, no, we have different, of course, the experiment, no, experiment basic research, no, with a questionnaire and others. Okay, so I think that's it for this topic, no, the uh, basic research, no, or research basic. Thank you, presenter.